So this video is going to be a little bit different. This video isn't going to be for the anxiety sufferer, but for their close ones, for their family, their friends, people that are very close with them that are trying to guide this person out. They may be noticing that they see this person suffer a lot and it feels like they're suffering themselves because they see somebody that they love suffer. And so what I want to do in this video is dispel a little bit about what's happening to that person, because it's hard to explain what anxiety feels like. And somebody who's from the outside perspective may not really be able to comprehend what the person's going through. All they can see is the behavior. So in this video, I really want to demystify it because I was on both sides. I was the person that was struggling, and now I have the great fortune of helping people come out of it. So I think I come from a very unique perspective that I think can bring some value into you. So with that said, let's get started. So my recovery started, I was the most carefree guy. I had a lot of fun. I was very social. I was maybe even a little bit reckless. My mom was always concerned about me maybe hurting myself or something like that. I studied abroad. I was gone for years. I had a great time. And into the cycle, I was the total opposite of a person. I would not leave my house. I started getting palpitations. I would spend 12 to 14 hours a day Googling my symptoms. I'm not joking, literally 12 to 14 hours. It was literally a full-time job. I learned so much from the internet, good and bad. And I just changed my personality. I just wasn't the same person. I was agitated quickly. I used to get irritated. I had lost a lot of weight. I wasn't happy. I wasn't smiling. I was always worried. I was always running to the doctors. And I was experiencing really debilitating symptoms. And look, looking back, I'm fine with that. Look, because I came out of it. It's not a big deal. But I do feel bad because I do feel like my parents had to see me go through something pretty difficult. And they had to see me go through it for a long period of time. I can't imagine how heavy and how hard that was for them because they feel helpless, right? You want to help somebody. How do you help somebody when you don't know what's happening? And I went through a lot. I think my parents went through a lot too. I mean, you could even maybe argue more, just because, to see their son struggling through this. And so it's really important to understand that when you're trying to help the person, you have to understand you're not going to be able to experience what they feel. And my parents had a tough time too. All they could see was me reacting in an over-exaggerated manner. Now, the truth is that I was actually reacting in proportion to how I felt. And that's probably one of the most important things you should understand, that the person you're seeing, that may be a whole different person that's going through this, who may be exaggerating about small things, and you would say, why is this person dealing with such small things in such a big way? You have to understand that the person that's struggling with anxiety is just responding in proportion to how they feel. That's it. See, you don't know how they feel, you just see their behavior. And their behavior is exaggerated, so you're like, what's happening? And so you may even think to a certain degree that this person's doing this to themselves. Now, this is where it gets kind of gray. Because to a certain degree, this is happening to them, yet this is happening by them at the same time. And that was very hard for me to hear. And anytime anyone said that when I was struggling, I was like, well, they're just saying I'm making this up. I'm not making this up. What I'm going through is very real, and I'm just reacting to how I feel. That's true. The person you're trying to help, they're just reacting to how they feel. Now, what the disconnect is that it's actually the reaction that's reinforcing the cycle. See, that doesn't make sense in our normal mind, right? Because we think cause and effect. But effect doesn't affect the cause, right? Because cause happens first, not with anxiety. Your effect actually affects you the next time. So the next time you experience anxiety, it over-exaggerates. Do that enough time, and then the anxiety starts generalizing. So the first step is really recognizing that the person that's going through this is just responding in proportion to how they feel and acknowledging how they feel. Look, you'll never be able to understand what they're going through. Even now that I help people around the world, look, my parents are very supportive. They're very happy of what I'm doing, but they still don't know what I went through. They still don't know. They're happy that I got out. They're happy I'm helping people. They still don't know. Even years later, even though we joke about it, even though I talk a lot about it and they watch my videos. My dad's probably watching this video right now. He's probably giving it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. He's giving it a thumbs up. But yeah, it's still hard for them to know because anxiety is still very experiential. So focusing on recognizing that they're just responding. Then the next thing I would say is recognize that they aren't doing this to themselves per se, but it is also their responsibility to get out of this. And as supportive as you can be, recovery does lie in that person's hand. And until that person takes initiation to their recovery, there's not much you can do. Besides provide that empathetic support, which is always important. I always say the reason why I was able to recover was my parents, was my family in general, my sister included, and some of my close friends. I don't know if I would have been able to recover without them, even though I didn't get the guidance, even though I didn't really have that much information. I just had a couple of books. But recovery was on me. They were supportive. I had to put in the work, but without that support, I don't know if I could have done that. And so part of the recovery is that you have to be the supportive person, but you also have to have them responsible for their responses. One of the biggest things about anxiety recovery that I learned was your ability to respond. You can say responsibility. That's how I define it as. The ability to respond is 100% within your control. Just because you're having a panic attack doesn't mean you should react in panic. The same way, if I say something to anger somebody, that doesn't mean that they have, they react in anger because I made them mad. They chose to get angry, regardless of what anybody says. And so part of recovery was understanding that, okay, you can feel the fear, but you don't have to respond in fear. You can respond with bravery. And a lot of that is actually what anxiety recovery is about, because then what you teach your brain, what you teach your mind, is that there is no threat. And then this is how the symptoms go away. So you want to be an empathetic support, but at the same time, recognize that recovery lies with them. Mental health awareness alone isn't enough. Awareness alone isn't enough. You really need to focus on the right steps. And even awareness, how are you aware of something that's not in your experience? If you haven't gone through this, it's hard. So be that supportive person and really help them being able to recover and get out of this. The last thing I would say is one of the best things you can do is finding somebody who really specializes in anxiety, I would say, who really understands what's happening. And that can be probably one of the hardest things. Because during my recovery journey, look, I went to a lot of doctors. I went to psychologists, psychiatrists, neurologists, GI doctor. I went to almost every subspecialty. I learned a lot about subspecialty just by being a patient. And what I found was I still didn't get much help. These experts, I have nothing against them, but it just wasn't what I needed to get out. So I would say find somebody who really specializes in anxiety and who has guided people out of recovery. Anxiety in itself is a very loose term. What does anxiety mean? Is that worry? Is that stress? Is that, the anxiety that I talk about in this channel, that people go through, that I went through, that your loved one is probably going through, is a little bit more intense in the sense that it's about your nervous system being sensitized. So the biggest thing is finding somebody who knows what's happening to guide you step